space as a technological platform. This is the title for the event. Peter Biryukov, Deputy Mayor, Moscow, in the Moscow government, on residential and public utility services. James Ramsey, he is an architect and the founder of the Low Line project and the design bureau Rod from New York, and his colleague Ben Barash, am I right, Barash? He is the founder and the Low Line director, and Usman Haq. He is an artist and architect, the founder and the head of Umbrellium Company from London. And our distinguished colleagues, Yamu Kasi, he is the head of Architectural Bureau Planar, and Ekaterina Maleva. She is the Strelka Design Bureau project director. Let's give them a hand. In fact, this is the first part of the discussion dedicated to public spaces, and we will have two parts performance today, and we have a preface dedicated to new technologies, new approaches, and new ideology to develop city spaces. This is part one, and tomorrow we'll have part two, which is directly related to mega project, which is called My Street, and tomorrow we will discuss it in a greater detail. If you have questions related to My Street, please save them for tomorrow. And if you have questions on new technologies and concepts, new approaches, whatever is related to day one of this open forum, please don't hesitate and ask your questions. And we believe we will have some time for answering these questions. We are very limited in time. Please be brief and clear and concise. And Peter, please take a floor. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you need to come up front, I think. People will be able to see you. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm happy to welcome you here. Today's topic of the Urban Forum, the cities during the technological revolution. It is actively debated due to energy saving, quality of the utilities, quality of air, reduction of CO2 emissions, green technologies, integrated systems, smart city systems, everything as an experiment. We've been testing it over recent time, and in the nearest future we will see results of these experiments. And I shall remind you that today the construction of new cities, it's a marginal urbanistics agenda. Most 73% of the Russian population, they reside in cities, and these cities are already there, been built. And that's why it's not the technological revolution and new construction is relevant to us, but how to change the old city considering new technologies coming in the picture. The street cities is one of the components of the public space. Before I move to discussing the key barriers, I will discuss the approaches that we used in the large-scale activities in 2014 and 2015. Before it started, we analyzed who and how manage the streets, where responsibility is allocated, what are the rules of the game. The results were negative. Different components of the streets were accountable to 15 different authorities and the bodies of the city. In fact, this is over 15 departments of the city. And in New York and Boston, that are famous for very well established maintenance system and methodology documentation, the number of responsible departments is 3 times less. And so we talk about communication difficulties between sociologists, geographists, architects, engineers, etc. People do not understand each other. They speak different languages, and each one defends their own values. And just imagine what is happening when the same thing is happening in the communication space between different departments and different tasks with different rules in place, different budgets. and the difficulties are related to it, and we face these difficulties while trying to reform and readjust the city economy. You know how it is difficult to talk to the profile departments, and you have to apply administrative measures to them sometimes. Just imagine what will happen that in each and every system technological revolution comes. It is coming already, and somewhere energy efficiency, energy safety, increase of security due to greater lightning intensity, intensification of the small businesses, sometimes improvement of the traffic flow, and we can be confident that as a result of these changes, the disintegration of all these systems will occur, will accumulate of data arrays that are fragmented, and specialists don't know what to do, difficult feedback, lack of indicators to estimate these changes, and low efficiency of the changes due to conflict with other areas. Technological revolution is a costly thing, and we want to spend money efficiently. One of the well-known examples on the city functioning systems is the first smart city in South Korea, Songa. The technological transformation of its energy-saving water supply, transportation systems, they took over 10 years, and the cost was over 35 billion USD. Speaking about Moscow, its reconstructed streets are also a part of technological revolution taking place in the city here and now. And we redistribute functions, we adjust the city space priorities in a systemic way. We build comfort, safety, environmentally friendly conditions of the environment. This is unprecedented project for amenities in Moscow in the history of Russia, and maybe this is a leading project globally on such a comprehensive maintenance. And as Mayor Sobyanin mentioned, new streets means infrastructure of new and post-industrial infrastructure of Moscow. Everybody can see the results. You can criticize the discomfort, temporary discomfort, but not everyone understands the internal logic of this process. And all these amenity activities are done step by step. We created a new modern standard. We identified 10 types of the streets in terms of geometry, location, intensity of use, and we created interrelated amenity standards for each type. And at one of the booths, you can see the city of the future. You can get an idea of the standards. The standards regulate everything, like the width of the lanes, width of the crossing, type of lighting. As a part of this standard, we proposed over 150 unique solutions. This is a smart standard. Moscow streets are different, and now we are talking that Moscow streets, there are 10 types of them, and each can be improved by different standards, from economy class to premium class, but irrespective of this class, each type has its own fixed number of options. And this amenity standard is a key component of Moscow street management system. But I want to reveal you the secret. And such technological revolution over many European and US cities, they undergone through this revolution. Unfortunately, specificity of each city is such that we couldn't take the guide system from London or Paris and just copy-paste it to Moscow. We had to invent our own system. But our logic is very much in line with the experience of the global capitals.
Our standards take into account the transport, economic, political, and tourist parameters of the streets. It's important to understand that standardization is not only about the economy of resources, but also improving the managing for the entire process. Based on our standards, we have prepared the estimates of our efficiency and plans for further work. We also conducted a statistical analysis of more than 80 streets for more than 20 parameters. We measured everything, such as the percentage of the streets area where there are puddles, or whether it's convenient for pedestrians, or the noise level. And we measured the parameters that were successful and that were not. And that helped us improve the costs by about 1.5% for making streets more beautiful. We believe that this approach is successful, and as a result, we would like to use this model for a broader range of goals. For example, we build a street, move it up to the square, and then it's important to create standards for all the public spaces of Moscow, about 5 new standards which will be developed by next year. Furthermore, we are modernizing the entire urban economy, that is the housing, the overhaul of buildings, system, service such as ventilation, heating, and so on. These are dozens of new standards, and there will be 100 rules for walking. Dear friends, please don't interrupt the speaker, and please move away from the stage a little bit. We'll go back to the topic of our forum, distinguished colleagues. That's something about everyone being after their own target, because the simultaneous interpreters cannot see us. And if there was a standard, if there is a speaker on the stage and no one is standing in his or her way, that would be a great standard. And in my practical work as a moderator of this event, I have to take such decisions. But let's go back to the city of technological revolution. Very frequently, there is the military activity, the military industry, where some important decisions are taken. For example, in the 18th century, Prince Moritz Zeransky in Holland made some innovative steps which helped him win against a more powerful country. He created a very modern system of training. As a result, his army shot 6 times more quickly than the Spanish. I am not trying to teach you military tactics, but in the construction area, I can show you what can be done here. We are modernizing 52 streets at the moment, and that's almost 60 buildings within our project. And our time is very limited. Our time is the 1st of September. We need to move away from those streets by the 1st of September. We've been working for just 3 months, and we needed to close down Tverskaya Street for 48 hours, make 15 pedestrian crosses, 2.5 meters deep down, that's underground crosses. That's also 15 pipes for sewage, and do 1 cross support. A lot of people had to be involved for that. I had to run all these activities personally, and that was an enormous task. We moved there 1,200 workers who worked around the clock. Everything was scheduled to a minute. There were 1,500 units of equipment. Then we laid all the sewage, we put in the sand, the concrete, we put on the asphalt. We washed everything. There was no single leak of sewage, and within 47 hours we reopened the city traffic. That's an example of operations where we are involved. Of course, it's very difficult to work without such systems, without such schedules and standards, and we are now trying to improve them in practice. 47 new streets were updated like this last year. This year it's even better, and there are breakthroughs based on new inventions, and there are breakthroughs based on what we already have and on what we are using to develop further. Thank you. Thank you, Piotr, for this very interesting and brief presentation. But talking about technologies, I can't help on asking you one question. A standard for making streets more beautiful, for arranging streets, it's on the one hand an order for designers and architects, but this is also a system of elements which form different streets and other public spaces. And I think that there will be new elements in place with time, which reflect the development of technologies in this area. As a person with huge experience, could you tell us what solutions you are currently lacking? What technologies are you waiting for? Maybe it so happens that you are dreaming about certain technologies. Well, first of all, this standard for beautification really helps us. For example, last year it was 47 streets, and last year we used our experience by just saying we are going to put this concrete there and this granite here, but this year we lay about 10 times as much granite slabs. And within our standard, we know very well what the size of the slabs is going to be, what the size of the pavement stone is going to be, and so on. Within this standard, we can tell you that Moscow has been divided into 10 types of streets. There are center streets, suburb streets, there are some special streets such as Tverskaya, Arbat, Sadovaya, the Garden Ring, the Kremlin Ring. There are certain types of streets, and this is what we are using. We have determined the types of lamps used. You probably noticed that here on Tverskaya there are lamps established that strictly conform with what was there in Moscow historically. And the deeper we plunge there, the better we see what we are lacking. So what are we lacking at this moment? It would seem that there is huge noise in the street. We need to think about noise isolation. Maybe it's not about some screens, but maybe some decorative, beautiful hills with trees. So over 20 years, we saw some trees disappearing from the streets. And in November, more than 100 lindens will be planted again in Tverskaya Street. Trees will be planted on the Garden Ring, on Arbat. And then we are asking ourselves, are there experts who are going to look after those trees that are aged 20 to 25 years? We also need to work on this as part of the new standard. As we follow a street, we need to understand that a street should be beautiful and a street should be accessible for a person. About 10% of public space is given away to pedestrians, only 10%. And the other part of this area is given away to the traffic. But we think that right now 25% of the area should be given away to traffic, about 65 or 70% to pedestrians, and 7 or 5% to the cyclists. And now people say that lamps should be better. but actually there should be also the savings mode so that lamps do not work unnecessarily. And we are proving that everywhere in Moscow there should be warm light. Our colleagues from the United States say that there should be extremely bright light, more than 3,000 light degrees. But we say it should be lower, 2,000, 2,400. And actually, very recently, our American opponents started saying that they should go back to what to what we insisted on. And there are many things like that. We need to resolve those issues. We need to work on them and improve them. So my argument is that there should be standards, interconnected standards, which will work to one and the same goal as the work of a system, and we need to establish such a system. Thank you very much, Piotr. Now I would like to give the floor to Ekaterina Maleeva, one of the authors of the new standards for beautification of the city. Ekaterina, you introduced those new elements into those standards, such as hills as acoustic barriers, landscapes, other innovative solutions. What new solutions have been introduced to the standards, and where should they be applied in this city? When we developed a standard, we introduced there not only the solutions that can be used here and now, but also solutions for the future, high-tech, innovative solutions that can resolve two major problems of Moscow: the noise in the street and air pollution. Among those solutions are hills as noise barriers and also noise absorption shields, which do not send this noise wave back to the street, but actually absorb it. And there are also special sensors that have a special wavelength, and they reduce this wavelength and prevent it from reaching the houses, the buildings. There are also solutions which improve air quality by about 20 to 25%, depending on the chemical composition of the air. Furthermore, there are technologies preventing from ice covering the road, such as the use of geothermal energy in order to warm up the road surface in places where there are a lot of cars and pedestrians. But I think that using such solutions is better in the streets where the current situation is the worst, where the traffic is the densest. That's the motorways of Moscow. And when we prepared this standard, it turned out that these are the most dangerous streets in terms of pollution, noise pollution, and the traffic is the densest there. But furthermore, the number of pedestrians is greater there because there are a lot of metro stations near those streets. So if we use such innovative solutions, we will see the effect at once, whether it works or not. And on the other hand, most city dwellers will also see that because a lot of people use those streets. As far as I remember, there was also the notion of innovative improvement and introducing such zones in some elite communities. We mentioned the importance of experience, exchanging experience with other countries, and we have here Dan and James, who represent a project of such elite zone in New York. The project is called Zero Line, or the low line, and this is the opposite of a high line. A high line is a kind of railroad moved into a park, and here we talk about an underground park.
You can speak from the tribune.
Also, are my slides? Or am I just speaking?
А где вот это устройство? Есть ли кто-то из организаторов?
Do you have this device? Is there any organizer here? Right.
Ready, right?
Yeah, already 1 minute lost.
Yeah, great. Well, look, I think that we're all here because we are living in this very special age, a very exciting time, representing the growth of the city. It's the era of the city. And it's exciting also because this is a time in which we can actually start applying technology to all the sort of myriad problems that are confronting us. And as the Vice Mayor notes, you know, technology can be applied to all sorts of challenges that are facing us today, from the basic issues of circulation, traffic, water, energy, to even sort of more subtle, intangible things like quality of life and the way that we actually use the city. I'm having a little bit of trouble with this AV.
It doesn't work.
No? All right.
Не работает. Презентация не работает.
The slides are not working, dear colleagues. Is there any technical staff representatives here? It's not working.
No, right?
Без картинок это довольно сложно.
And it's quite difficult to do this without pictures.
Мы продлим время, это 100%.
Okay, we will certainly give you more time, but is there any staff from the Moscow Urban Forum who could resolve this issue?
Джеймс опишет, а вы в интернете потом посмотрите.
Okay, James will write it down and then you will look it up on the internet.
Forum. And I used to work at NASA making satellites for outer space, and I can't seem to figure out how to use this, you know? But in any case, I'm here to talk to you guys about the Lowline project. And this is a project that taps directly into that idea that we can use technology to reconsider the way we think about public space. And so what the Lowline project is it's a concept that we can take advanced solar technologies, use that to concentrate light, deliver it down through the street, and expand that light back out in an abandoned trolley terminal underneath New York to create a public green space for the community and the city to enjoy. Now, how does that work? Well, the foundation of the project in general relies upon a new technology that we and our group have been spearheading along with several partners throughout the world that uses reflective parabolic surfaces to condense natural sunlight to 30 times the brightness of the sun, where then we can take basically a laser of sunlight and send it down through the street and through tubes using lenses and mirrors to wherever we need to put it, where we then spread that light back out. And once we've done that, what we can do is we've delivered natural sunlight into a totally forgotten space to create this public green space. Now, the space itself is underneath one of New York City's most historic, oldest neighborhoods, but it's also originally a very poor neighborhood. And so the idea here is that it's a neighborhood that 100 years ago was actually literally the most densely populated neighborhood on Earth. And so this is a very built neighborhood. And also, because it's been a poor neighborhood, one that's been continually sort of underserviced by all the sort of public amenities that the rest of us enjoy. And so what we're able to do is we're able to take a neighborhood that has literally no space left. It's all built, and we found a new space into which we can insert this technology and create a new green space. And so having done so, what we're able to do, on the one hand, is to create a new sort of architectural and artistic expression in which we're able to take a space that's actually quite old, it's over 100 years old, and fuse it with this almost sort of science fiction technology and aesthetic to create something that's completely new, that embraces both the history of the site as well as the future of our city. Once we've done that, it also, of course, creates a green space really in a neighborhood where we need it the most. And so, sort of just to conclude, see, I'm pretty fast. That's all right. I don't have pretty pictures to show you anyway. But just to conclude, you know, for us, this represents a means of using technology as a new tool to actually create a type of space that's completely like anything else that's ever existed before. But it's also something that potentially opens the door to the way that we consider public spaces and what we can do with our abandoned spaces and how we can actually look to invent new public space in areas that have no more space left. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Спасибо большое, James. Sit down.
Thank you, James. Indeed, we have lots and lots of information on this website, this project website. It's a very interesting project, and I can see Dalia Safiulina, Mrs. Safiulina, Chief Architect of Design Bureau Strelka. And last year we invented the concept of the boulevard inn, and your project inspired us to innovative solution. We wanted to green the tunnel on the Arbat Square. It convert the distance between Nikitsky and Gogolevsky Boulevard to the promenade, and it was a very enthusiastic idea, but transportation department did not give us any support. Speaking about relevant trends, one of the trends is reducing number of private cars, and as Peter mentioned about the streets are also working in this direction. At a certain point of time, we will have much fewer cars, and we will manage to create this promenade after all. And I will tell you why we can do it. And today I talked to a number of high-level managers, and they said, and so they want to shift us to public transportation. My colleague was trying to shift everyone to metro, but it took me 2 weeks. I stopped half of the city, and everybody is riding metro now. And don't yell, don't scream, please be organized. And I would like to ask our US colleagues. In our city we have underground passages, and many of these passages, they are freed from the trading areas. Now they are empty. Can we use your technologies to green, to give amenities to our underground passages? Can we?
The technology itself is broadly applicable to all sorts of different scenarios. On the one hand, a city like this one has a vast array of unused underground spaces. This would be a fantastic idea that not only applies to those, but also applies potentially to areas underneath a roadway, for example, to complete the boulevard. And so it's a technology that ranges anywhere from creating a solution for these kinds of scenarios to even something that you can implement to actually have natural sunlight that's good for human beings in hospitals, schools, anything, any sort of large building, any sort of basement space, maybe even a moon base or something like that.
Спасибо большое. Сейчас перейдем к Усману.
Thank you very much. The floor is given to Usman Haq. He is a renowned architect and artist, and his presentation works. And this is mostly due to the fact that Usman merges the art and high tech in his public spaces. Usman, tell us on innovative ways to merge art and amenities in.
Introduction was because I left my translation back there, but I'm going to assume it was relatively
really
nice.
good.
So thank you. Yeah, I'm actually an architect, but I'm involved in both architectural projects as well as core infrastructural projects for the Internet of Things, and also in projects to do with participation and community and structuring the involvement of people. So the thing I want to talk about today is this combination of cities, of technology itself, and people, especially about people and how people can be involved in these things. Because the first thing I want to kind of reassure you is that I'm not a technology skeptic, right? I'm deeply involved in very fundamental development of technology. But it's very important to understand that technology is particularly good at efficiency type of problems. It's particularly good at finite, knowable, quantifiable problems. If you need a decision to be made that's basic and computable, technology is great. But when it comes to questions like, what decision should we make? What is the thing that we should decide about? Why should we decide about that? How do we decide about it? All of those become fundamentally human questions that really can only be can only be answered by involving people themselves. So my concern when we start to talk about integrating technology into the urban fabric is this question of how do we make sure that we don't actually destroy the thing that makes our city most valuable? Okay. The technology is trying to sabotage me here. I may...
No way.
Next. How about that? Because let's think about what actually makes a city valuable. In my opinion, the thing that makes a city valuable is that it's effectively our best engine for supporting and creating diversity, right? It is the one engine that we human beings have created that can deal with novelty and actually thrives on novelty. Every other kind of invention or machine that we've created or engine takes fixed inputs and has fixed outputs, not a city. And I would like to give you the proposition that actually the city really is an engine for those three things that flashed up very quickly on the screen. Let me go back. Is really an engine for serendipity and novelty. And that means that, by definition, there are some aspects of the city that are not planned. You can't plan for serendipity. So the real challenge is basically to figure out how to use technology not just to answer the knowable questions, not just to solve problems of efficiency, of convenience, of security, of optimization, but how do you use technology actually to connect people together, to use technology where they are actually not just making decisions, but making decisions about decisions. How do you actually involve people in contributing to and owning their urban environment? And so I'm going to just show very briefly, in the time I have left, just 3 projects that I've been involved in a variety of ways. The first one was called Open Burble, and this was in Singapore, where basically what we created was a modular carbon fiber structure that members of the public could connect together and assemble into a structure, that was 60 meters tall. They designed it, they assembled it, they controlled it, they flew it, and it was something that actually, for the first time, I think most of the hundreds and thousands of people that were involved in, it was the first time that they actually changed the skyline of their city. This was only a temporary project, right? It was not a long-term project, but the people were actually involved directly themselves in designing this thing, questioning each other about their own contributions, debating about the way that this thing should be configured and constructed, actually going through the kinds of questions that a lot of us designers do. And then they actually transformed, again, just for a short time, but they actually changed the skyline of their city. And this actually, for me, was an important turning point in my practice. This project's about 10, 11 years old now. Because this is the moment at which I understood that when people get involved in actually building the thing and making decisions about it, I still get emails today from people that were there because they remember and they want to share with me their experience of it. And people write about this thing as if it's their project, not my project, not the Singapore project, but their own project. And that was a very important thing for me. The next project I'm going to talk about just very briefly is called VoiceOver. And this is in North England. This is a much more recent project where basically we created an interactive chain of light and sound that weaved its way through a North England community. And effectively what this was an ultra-public infrastructure for communication. Now usually we try and make in cities our communication infrastructure ultra-secure, ultra-private. But we were looking here, basically, to make a communication infrastructure that everyone could listen in on. Everyone could actually use it for whatever they wanted to, but still trying to get some slides here. But it was effectively a public communication infrastructure. It was a 2-year-long project, so people were involved in every aspect of this. First, defining what the project was. Second, defining the route that this snake took, because it only went from house to house of the houses that actually wanted to be part of it. And they used the project as an excuse to talk to their neighbor to get them involved. Thirdly, it was they themselves who decided to use this infrastructure to to talk about the history of the place, to have conversations with each other, to tell bedtime stories to the community, to their neighbors, to tell jokes. Lots of kids used it to tell tales on each other. It was even instrumental in bringing together three cousins who lived on the same road, but they'd never actually met before. So again, this is the idea of an infrastructure where you invert the usual concerns about privacy and security and say, what happens when it is an ultra-public infrastructure? The final thing I want to talk about is Thingful.net. As I said, I've been involved in a lot of the kind of development of the fundamental technology for the Internet of Things, and about 8 years ago created one of the earliest and largest platforms for connecting up sensors around the world. And it was basically a community-oriented platform. There's now thousands of these platforms around. Many cities have their own open data platform. Many businesses have an open data platform. So what we've done is we've created a search engine that searches all of these different platforms. So if you're looking for air quality, for example, you can find air quality from all sorts of different networks of sensor, and you can go directly to the data source. If you're looking for radiation in Germany, you can see that there's a lot of radiation sensors there. There's a lot of data there to be used. Earthquakes in California, water buoys in the Pacific, or maybe even sharks, because today even animals are connected to the network. You can go and find all these things and actually get data directly from them. I did a search on Moscow just before coming over here. And actually Moscow has got loads of data. There are loads of connected things out there. If you click around, you'll see that there's weather stations, there's air quality, there's bike sensors, there's home automation, energy, radiation, etc.
And what is your conclusion about Moscow?
Well, this brings me to the question that, okay, great, you've got the first layer of technology. Now the question is, what are you actually going to do about it? What are you actually going to do with this? How are you going to involve people, not just in, looking at these pretty pictures and saying, okay, great, we've got open data. Not just sort of saying, okay, I see an air quality sensor. But how do I use this data to make a decision or to change something about my life? How do I use all of these sensors actually to get together with my neighbor and do something that changes the city myself?
And what is your advice in the domain? If we are speaking in a practical aspect.
Well, first of all, think about technology, connecting people to make decisions together, not for efficiency. When you're integrating any kind of technological solution, think about the cost of disenfranchisement. By that, I mean that if you are using technology to replace humans, that has a cost on the sense of humanity and engagement. So more importantly, when you are looking at the development of technology in cities, okay, efficiency is one metric, but think about engagement. How does the metric of engagement lead to an engaged city, not just a smart city? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osman. Времени остается мало, но...
We are running out of time, but we really want to involve Elijah Mukasey. He is a landscape architect. We are consulting with this expert, and we're developing standards along with him. From your Moscow experience perspective, what are the technologies you believe need to be implemented in Moscow from what we've heard today? I really like what Usman just described. My favorite topic is cheap, rather inexpensive experiments in the urban environment. To be honest, even though I participated in all this, I'm really concerned how the city city streets will be improved all at once. Perhaps for some of the districts, it is initially we need to conduct activities involving new technologies, not the way we did it previously, not just painting and barriers, but we need to use more high-tech solutions. Light, for instance, some other things, and take a look how the same streets might function. The pedestrian walks can function. In case of the pulsing light, for instance, and new technologies can help us to analyze this process, the progress and results. Because we have a good tool, rather good tool, and we have multiple tools in Moscow. We have active citizen portal in Moscow, our city portal. But in fact, this is the area to make efforts for the private entrepreneurs. I know in programming we have a lot of progress. We just can analyze data coming from data storages, data arrays, and see what is going on and what is the reaction to even the smallest minor changes. And due to this modern tools, and we will become more confident that to make sure that we are heading in the right direction. Thank you, Elijah. You are talking mostly on the new technologies that enable to implement different test amenity tools, right? And also I wanted to add that it would be beneficial to have open domain data. And Usman said we have lots of open domain data, we just need to know how to search. And in fact, Usman is very right. We have lots of open domain data in Moscow, and due to implementation of the new technologies, due to the research mentioned by Peter Buryakov, we will have more and more data like this, and they need to be presented and processed correctly. And our strive is, our desire is to have transparency for this program. If you had a chance to go to attend the exhibition, you can find materials on the amenity standards, and we believe this standard will be published, and any citizen will be able to play with these pictures. To conclude with our very speedy session, still interesting session, I would like to note that we started with the human being and we concluded with the human being, because Peter mentioned the organizational points of the construction works, how to organize this army of professionals and build the constructors, and Usman mentioned how to involve the citizens into all these processes. And this kind of structure of our conversation testifies that city is not for technology, city is for humans. And we have all technologies serving people, we have new technologies that will be implemented to make the city more convenient and comfortable and responsive to humans. And my street program is very much in line with it. City for humans. This is the motto. That's it. Thank you. We want to thank our friends and still taking place in this open forum. Thank you for your good advice, for your hints, and you are invited to participate in our program implementation, and let's make our Moscow more beautiful and better. So at some other forum we can share that in Moscow it is already implemented. Thank you.